We know that a big part of the reason humans became the dominant animal on the planet was our ability to cooperate and create really powerful and strong myths. And these include the myth that is nationhood, the myth that is money, the myth that is a limited liability company, and even the myth that there is an indivisible self that we can discover. These are all myths. And as Yuval Noah Harari says, all large-scale human cooperation is ultimately based on our belief in imagined order. These are sets of rules that, despite existing only in our imaginations, we believe them to be as real as gravity. And these myths are known as intersubjective realities. And they're so powerful that people let their lives be governed by them and sometimes even die for them. Now, in many large organisations, people are basically strangers. They don't know each other. But by creating common myths, people can cooperate successfully by believing in them. And that means that when we're introducing new ways of working, i.e. a change, we've got to incorporate the new thing into the stock of organisational myth, in other words, culture. So just like political leaders who rely on national myths, the myth of nationality, organisational leaders need to be constantly creating new organisational myths, new intersubjective realities. And that's particularly important during change. You've only got to look at how powerful myths can be to see how effective fostering and developing them can be. And this talks to the role of organisational leaders in change. Basically, they're changing myths. Another way to say it is they're changing the culture. But deciding to change is easy. We just decide. And there's a great example of that in Yuval Noah Harari's book, Homo Deus. It describes how the myth of the Soviet Union was ended by writing on a piece of paper, basically. On the 8th of December 1991, the leaders of the Soviet Union, the Ukraine and Belarus got together. They signed a piece of paper, and 69 years of the Soviet Union was no longer a myth, it was gone. So it's easy to decide to change. It's harder to sustain the change. But deciding to change is not enough. It's not enough to sustain the change. And part of myth making is the belief that there is a future, there's a new future state that we should aspire to. And we've got to get enough people to believe in that new future state. Move from the current state through the transition state to the new envisaged future state, the new intersubjective reality. With the Soviet Union, the new future state was the Commonwealth of Independent States. In an organisation, the future state is the vision. And if it's to work, that vision is created by leaders and sustained by everyone. And in their book, The Social Construction of Reality, Berger and Luckman point to three key things about sustaining a change. And those are socialisation, conversation, and identity. And with socialisation, they say that there's a temporal sequence in the course of which an individual is inducted into participation in the organisation's social dialectic. In terms of conversation, make a great point. When we're talking about change in terms of conversation, conversations are often seen banal and irrelevant are the opposite. They're actually a constant mutual reconfirmation of each other's internal thoughts and should be encouraged. If that conversation can include aspects of the new way of working, the change that we're talking about, so much the better. And identity, this is in terms of concepts of affiliation. When we're helping people through change, sometimes they struggle with affiliation to the new intersubjective reality, which translates into a lack of acceptance of the new way of working. And in change management, we have an approach to help people with that. So socialisation is key, conversation is key, and the affiliation of identity with the new way of working is key. And so sustainment of the change is predicated upon putting in place structures that help people socialise, talk about and identify with the new ways of working. It's only when we do this that people in groups create over time concepts or mental representations of each other's actions in the context of the change. And it's only when that happens that these concepts eventually become habituated into reciprocal roles played by people in relation to each other. And that way, changes become institutionalised. They become the new intersubjective reality. People believe in it, subscribe to it, and it becomes the way we do things around here. Hope that helps.